Hello all, and welcome to Shatter Our Souls with Novaria. And today I want to take a brief look at Borderlands 1's final boss of the 4th DLC, which is, of course, Minac. Now the reason I want to bring this up, and I figure what better chance, is because this boss, more than any other entity, any other enemy in all of Borderlands, was probably the hardest to complete without the use of bullets.
Hello, my friends.
Mostly due
Hyperion
to the
asked me
fact
transport you to even
that,
bigger, better planets once you
well,
are through dispatching that
the entirety
little
of the
ship.
boss fight itself
Exciting
is...
new worlds like Eden 6.
Well, you can't punch it.
On Eden 6.
And if you can't punch the boss, then that means you need alternative means, right? So, Borderlands 1's final boss, Minac, ends up being the very much anti-Brick, which is disappointing. Up until this point, every single enemy, every single boss, barring a couple of small oddballs, have all been defeatable via the means of a good old-fashioned fistfight. And that's great, right? Here's the reality. The Mega Interplanetary Ninja Assassin Claptrap is not defeatable via fisticuffs. And that's the first thing I want to bring up, the first point I need to make. This thing does not take kindly to humanity. In fact, this thing is so anti-humanity, Brick, that it's virtually impossible to beat it using only the fisticuffs, as I stated. The reason behind this, I think, actually has to do with enemy placement. So, for those that know, there is a bit of a glitch or oversight. When you and whatever you are attempting to hit are taking up the same XY coordinates, the Z coordinates, which is up and down, look at where you are and says, oh yeah, they're in the same spot, therefore they can punch each other. And it allows you to hit an enemy that is flying a mile in the air like it's nothing. And this is great. This glitch oversight that I used to defeat Mothrak, I thought was going to be the key to victory. And it didn't. In fact, far from it, it was very clearly not possible. So, why am I saying it like this? Well, we still technically have another option. The secondary option, the one that I am pursuing for this boss battle, is the use of grenades. Now, grenades are well, it does break the no ammo rule. But, who said anything about no bullets? So, this is the first and only enemy in the entire game that requires the use of something more. And so, I get to say that this challenge was almost successful. Now, I want to be very clear, I wanted so very badly for this to be a success. I wanted for it to be possible. And for the longest time I thought it was. Because if I look back at everything that the game threw at me through the duration of the run, there's a lot going on that makes it seem like it was possible. From the very moment that you can defeat Nine Toes or Bonehead, you get this feeling of, yeah, I can do it. And it gave me this sense of, if I tried hard enough, there was nothing that I could not accomplish with just the fisticuffs. That there was some oversight, some side exploit that could come up that says, hey, yeah, you can do this, you just need to kind of break the game a little bit. Go gadget arms, if you will. By the time we fought Sledge, there was a lot going on that made me realize that there are certain enemies that were more powerful than others, and there were others that were really disappointing. Of the main bosses that cropped up, Nine Toes was a little on the difficult side. Not terrible, but not ideal. He was the kind that I was kind of scared I would end up botching my attempt against, and that happens. Bonehead fell with ease. The Roid Rage Psycho was one-cycled. And at that point, I had all the confidence in the world. Because I just defeated a main boss with 0 effort. Sledge comes along, and he's much the same. He did give me a run for my money in some capacity, but he was a main opponent. He was a main villain. Of course he's going to give me a little bit more of a challenge. And the game went beautifully, in my opinion, one step after another for the entire run, until we hit Mad Mel. Now, for those who have watched this series for any length of time, first of all, thank you. Secondly, you've heard me talk at length about Mad Mel. Mad Mel is the first and only vehicle-based boss in the entirety of Borderlands 1, which is great, because it means that we don't necessarily need to find solutions left, right, and center. But it's also one of very few mandatory enemies that are very anti-brick. Now, to explain this kind of side of things, Mad Mel, and by extension the Mad Mel patrols and the vehicle-based enemies, the runners, if you will, all have this quirk. When they run into you, you die. When you die, they heal. And so it ended up this circumstance where I needed more options, more availability, more plans set aside to deal with these entities. And as with anything, I kind of brute forced it. I smashed my head into the brick wall until it caved. And that was fun. It was enjoyable. Kind of chaotic, kind of silly, but it was possible to beat Mad Mel with only fisticuffs. At that point I thought, okay, cool. What else can the game throw at me? Because at this point I'm safe, I'm healthy, I'm doing great. And from that point on, there really wasn't anything in the mid-game that really pushed me to any absurd degree. I had a couple run-ins with enemies like Crom, where he had some pretty high defense, but it wasn't something that was a one-and-done challenge. We ran into other enemies like, well, I'm gonna go with Master McCloud, and he didn't have any issues. No, Master McCloud was actually a harder one. Never mind. But the point I'm getting at is that every boss that came up, every enemy that came up, I'd begun to get this assumption that something would go wrong. That I would run into some form of brick wall, if we will. And every brick wall crumbled within about an hour and a half. The only wall that did not crumble within a period of time is Minac. Now, as you can see, as shown here, I can't actually hit it. There's just enough of an angle there that he's not directly above me. Minac's weak point is directly above a shelf, which means Brick's punches can't hit it. It's a very small detail of his design, but that entire detail is what makes him insurmountable. Now, to be clear, every single enemy, every single entity I fought leading into this did leave a little bit to be desired. And I won't deny that running towards the end of the game, there was a little bit of a okay, now what mentality. I was scared, rightfully so, that I was going to have to deal with another entity, another enemy. This one was the Destroyer. And with the Destroyer, I remember being a little bit on the concern side. After all, there was a possibility that I wouldn't be able to do damage to it at all. That, in a similar vein to my Deathless run, where I ran out of ammunition fighting that thing, I could potentially find myself in a circumstance that I couldn't get out of. That was the concern. And I didn't know what to do about that. So I rushed in, hoping that I could at least lay some sort of damage on it. And it worked. The damage stuck. Big Boss Man is going down, right? And so we defeated him. And at that point, well, the main game was completed without using any weapons or any grenades for that matter. So of course, the next step is, well, how far can we take this? How far can we actually push the storyline of this game and still come out without actually throwing or using weapons? And the answer to that is pretty far. Now, in order of the DLC I fought, I went through Jacob's Cove first. I figured that Jacob's Cove was a safe option. It's a lot of zombies, and yes, they tell you that you don't want to get within arm's reach of these things because they'll turn your brain into a crappuccino, but, like, nothing really stopped me there. And to be clear, you don't want to get within arm's reach of Brick for exactly the same reason. So I figured that one would be safe. And lo and behold, it was. And then, like a moth drawn to the flame, I thought, how much further can we push this? And so we went to Mad Moxie's Underdome Riot. And Moxie's is painful. Now, for an average run, Moxie's is functional. It's not that the game will throw anything at you that's needlessly complicated or difficult. There's a couple side missions or side objectives that could potentially put a damper on your possibilities of success. But that's just it. You have to survive about 25 waves of enemies. About an hour. And with 1 hour in, congratulations, you did it. You win. And you move on. You forget that anything ever happened, and you probably will never go back to Mad Moxie's Underdome Riot after the fact. This is just known about it. But now, with the riot done, what next? Well, we went directly to the secret armory of General Nox. Now, Nox's armory actually had a couple enemies that I was a little concerned with. First and foremost, the bandit patrols ended up having the larger trucks of the monster. Secondly, you have a couple of major enemies, including the armored mech suits of the Atlas Corporation. And you also had enemies like Skyscraper, as well as, oh, what was it? Nox himself. So the question becomes, well, how likely are you to defeat them? The answer is incredibly. It's actually fairly easy to beat them. But the reality is that you don't know this until you try. The Mad Mel patrols, or the beasts, the monsters that you end up fighting throughout the game, are just that, larger trucks. That's all there really is to them. And the trucks, they fight like any other large vehicle. They have a higher armor ability than I think most of the enemies in the entirety of the game. But that's about it. That's all they really have going for them. So again, how bad could it be? How about Skyscraper, a boss literally designed to be fought with a truck? Well, he wasn't too bad either. I thought Skyscraper would be an issue because he has a tendency of one-shotting. I figured he would be possible. Same situation with Mothrak. Get underneath him, punch straight up, and hope that you do the job, right? But the thing is that at that point, Skyscraper is built to be a high-level enemy. How far would I have to level grind to be able to defeat this thing? I didn't know. And so, I had figured that it would be possible, but I didn't know when. And he went down without a big issue. The only one that really was expected to cause any issues that really did was the boss himself, Nox and his armory. Because Nox's whole shtick was, I am going to fight you mano-y-mano, and that's pretty much it. And he went down pretty easy, so obviously he wasn't a big issue either. So why do I bring all of this up? Because every single one of these entities, bosses, etc., has some stake at what's been going on here. Now, of the main bosses, you have Dr. Ned and his zombie form. You have, you have the assassins of the Nox, You have Nox himself, and you have a vehicle-based entity that, if he drives over you, can KO you in one hit. He is, for lack of better terminology, the anti-brick. Everything that gave me some semblance of a concern, some semblance of trouble, all came to haunt me with this boss. And reality is that he became the perfect trifecta, the perfect anti-brick. Now, this isn't to say that he's the worst boss in the franchise. That very easily goes to Cromarax. But Minac gives such a run for your money that I do personally believe that Minac would destroy most players attempting this run. And reality is that I got lucky. I know full well that I had some form of a plan to deal with it, but dealing with it in and of itself was an entirely different story. Now, all things being said, all things being equal, I believe that this run, more than the Deathless run, was actually easy. And this comes as, I think, a shock to some people. Why would a Deathless run be harder than this? Right? I have access to everything the game has on offer. Everything the game intends for me to use, I can use with ease. That's not the problem. See, the reason why this is easier than the Deathless run was due to the fact of stakes. When I went into a boss battle like fighting Mad Mel or Sledge or even Dr. Ned and General Nox, every single one of them I understood that I could throw myself at it as many times as I possibly could in order to get some level of success. That was the hope. Something, somehow, some way would crumble and allow me to complete my task. However, in the Deathless run, one mistake is all it takes. And so there's that ongoing, everlasting anxiety around, what if? But then, will this work? And so I had intuitively built up this level of, I need to do something, some way to protect myself. I often had second-guessed myself around whether option A or B would be safer on account of I didn't know what would actually work. So as I was saying, the entire run was more unique due to the fact that there was a certain degree of, I can do this, I understand what I'm up against. The Deathless run, every single time that I went somewhere, something had the potential to go wrong. It meant that as often as possible I was in a vehicle going pew 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 24/7 because I would keep people away from it. It meant that every single time that the option of becoming a sniper and fighting at long range was an option, my immediate reaction is, okay, yes please. Every single time that I started falling low on health, the anxiety around what would happen would spike something terrible. And the reality is that this run, comparatively, was more of a you fell down, compared to the other one, which was very, I don't want to go down. And so, I do want to acknowledge that there is a certain level and a certain expectation around how these two runs ended up going comparatively to one another. With all of that in mind, I wanted to kind of point out a few things, because I do believe that Borderlands is a good game. But there's been some ongoing lack of, I suppose, enjoyment I've been having lately. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that Borderlands 1's base game, which is designed around the looter-shooter mentality, does lend itself to a constant growth. But, how do I want to put this? Let's take 2 steps back. Classic Borderlands playthroughs have a level of constant growth, constantly pushing you to find or do something new. Every time you pick up a new weapon, there is something that is more unique or more versatile or more capable than what you're currently using. Every time you play the game in a standard run, you get something. Doesn't have to be much. It could be a new pistol that you are never going to touch. But there's always something. There's a sense of growth, a continued optimism, continued movement forward, which I did not get in this run. See, Borderlands 1, in terms of doing it as a brawler build, has a lot of good to it. It has a more unique flavor to it. It has a more unique approach to the game. I won't argue that. I think it's great. But the problem that I ran into is that part of the identity of the game disappears the instant that you start messing around with how games themselves are to be played. Now, I'm going to kind of point at this a little bit, because you take a shooter and you take away guns, now you just added another layer to the game. When you take a looter shooter and you take away guns, suddenly the game becomes a lot. It loses what its identity was intended to be. It loses its fundamental core gameplay loop. Every time you pick up the controller in a guesstimated run, you're hunting down new weapons, you're swapping out, you're selling, you're increasing your arsenal, you are building yourself up to be a faster, stronger, more deadly Vault Hunter. That is fantastic. But you strip that down to bare bones, suddenly your core concerns are survivability and raw power. Now, in this run, survivability was the core fundamental goal. It didn't matter how hard the enemy hit as long as I could stay standing. It didn't matter how long a boss took if I could stay standing. As soon as I got knocked to my knees, the question was, well, what approach went wrong? What part went sideways? If I got knocked down, what caused it? And this is kind of the fundamental problem that I'm going to run into, is what causes me to go down? And sometimes it's very cleanly that I didn't turn on my berserk mode fast enough, or that I rushed into a full auto turret directly aimed at my chest and thought nothing would come of it. These are two circumstances that lended themselves to me playing in a way that didn't necessarily mean good things for me long term. Now, as an individual, I have to be honest about that. I don't believe that there is anything wrong with saying that I went down or got my butt kicked a few dozen times. Hell, a few hundred. But with other runs, when it came to falling in the Deathless run, my immediate question was, what could I have done differently? So when I first attempted it, when I first looked at that run, I made it to 9 toes before I fell. And I thought, well, why did I go down? Well, I was trying to fight a 3-pronged battle in a arena without any ability to defeat these things fast enough. So I spent a couple extra moments, did a little extra grinding, found myself a new weapon that was stronger, and attempted it a second time in the second run. And I defeated 9 toes, no problem. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty good. And I kept going until I got to, I believe, until Sledge. And I thought, wow, this is going great. And then Sledge kicked my teeth in, and I thought, well, what went wrong? And the answer was that I got stuck in a situation where I had no means of getting myself back up, and I opened the wrong door at the wrong time without acknowledging my limitations. And I ended up taking massive damage because Sledge decided to open fire the instant the door was open. Again, that was me. That was my mistake. So the next time I went in there, I had this goal of, I am going to fight Sledge, but I'm only going to use the door on the opposite side of him to make sure I always have some room, some means of escaping danger while using the arena to the fullest of my capabilities. And it worked. And then we got to Mad Mel. And with Mad Mel, I went in and I started going guns blazing, only to get hit by a truck. Well, how do you not get hit by a truck? So I spent 2 hours digging around trying to find a means of getting into the arena and building some form of fortifications. I thought using a runner would be a fortification. I thought that fighting him as a runner would be a fortification. I went and I used about 5 or 6 different solutions to fight this one entity. And I thought I had it. And then finally it clicked that, oh, I can just use this glitch and get out of the arena so that I can just fight him and use the entrance to the arena as a defensive position. And that worked. So again, you learn as you go. And that is the key tenet that comes in with this game and doing that type of run. Every time you pick up the controller, you're not only learning or fighting enemies left, right, and center, you are learning how each enemy, how each encounter functions. The instant you understand each of the encounters, you're in a much more solid and capable place than when you started. Brick never had that. I've kind of alluded to it and poked at this problem multiple times. Brick never had that. Every time I played the run, every time I turned on the console, the question was, how far can I take brute force? How far can I push this mentality? Could I defeat Mothrak? I didn't know. Was there a means of defeating Mad Mel in a reasonable span of time that wasn't going to drive me absolutely crazy? I had no clue. And every time I picked up that controller, it became a question of brute force. Not skill, not even thought. It became a question of, can I outpace my healing with my damage? Can I outpace my opponent? You'll see at this point, I'm incredibly over-leveled, because the entire game from start to finish had to do with, can I outpace, outdo, outmatch my opponent in terms of raw stats, because there wasn't any type of strategy I could employ. It's not like I was going around in a bunker saying I should use a shotgun here instead of a sniper rifle. I didn't have option of either of them. It is not like I went around and said, my target's pretty far off, I should use a sniper rifle on this, or I should unleash a wall of lead. That didn't happen. And why not? Because every time I went in there, the solution was the same. Cannons. The ones on either side of Brick's torso, but the cannons were the solution. They were the be-all, end-all. There was no grander expectation, no grander belief that I had, other than I can brute force this somehow. And that's disappointing, because I wanted desperately for there to be more to this run. I thought that there would be a lot more planning, a lot more preparation, a lot more thought, a lot more consideration, or circumstances, something, anything. But it just never came. So, can you beat Borderlands without the use of guns? Absolutely. Can you beat it without the use of guns and grenades? No. And that's kind of the point I want to leave off with. This run, for all intents and purposes, for everything it did right, it often left less. It often didn't quite lead to the expectations I had envisioned. Anyway, with all of that being said, what's the next on the docket? What's the next major thing we're handling? Well, I'm going to be completely honest. I am getting a hankering for an older franchise that I got involved with a while back.
And
Metroid.
that is how it really happened. Except the part about me getting stood up by that crazy bitch. I just made that up to keep the ladies hanging around.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. As I was saying, my next major task, my next major video series is going to be on Metroid Prime 4. And it was one that I had a long time coming. It's one that I wanted to get involved with for a while. But I don't like to leave any loose ends. So I let it sit for a while. So, with all of that in mind, we got a few dozen things that we need to sort out. First and foremost, we need to get paid. I'm sorry, but Brick did not just get hit by a truck like a half dozen times, maybe more, over something simple like that. Instead, we are going to get paid out in spades. And I believe that we all know what that means. A, cash, and B, this version of Brick will finally have access to the pew-pews. And with access to pew-pews, Brick's power may just skyrocket for the next run. Not that I'm intending on doing it right away, I think that's absurd, but it would be nice to see Brick get a little bit more recognition and growth, especially given all the hell I have dragged this version of the character through. Anyways, if you have enjoyed this series, I would love if you left a like or a subscribe. Maybe a comment down below asking for something. Anything you can think of, I will try my darndest to get my hands on. And I would love to share gaming with the world again in the near future. But with all of that being said,
You survived. Good for you.
take care of one another. And I hope you all have a good one.
Ah, yes, your reward. I suppose you've earned it. Really? Here's a key to the Hyperion corporate gift shop. You'll find your payment there.
my stuff.